All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. We're talking about the Las Vegas Raiders in tonight's video. 36-22 home loss yesterday afternoon against unanimously the worst team in the National Football League. This is a Panthers team that was outscored 73-13 in their first two games. They just benched the #1 overall pick from last year in Bryce Young, and the loss itself sucked. And then, of course, our head coach, Antonio Pierce, comes out here and just says straight up in his presser that some players came out flat and made business decisions during the game. Now, we've heard a ton of speculation the entire day, all yesterday afternoon and evening, about who these specific players, all these journalists, all these reporters, all these YouTubers like myself, we all have our own opinions. Folks, people are freaking out. They're absolutely freaking out, and I get it. We'll get into, kind of why this really sucks. Actually, let's just do it right now. Last year, the Raiders lost 3-0 in a shutout by the Josh Dobbs and the Nick Mullins-led Minnesota Vikings. In 2022, the Raiders lost to Jeff Saturday, and that was his only victory. The Raiders made the playoffs in 2021, but they could have been an even better seed. They lost to the 4-win Giants. Back in 2020, the Raiders lost 43-6 against the Falcons, who ended up winning just 4 games that season. But folks, I think a lot of people are taking it way too worse than what it is here. And we're going to get into that in tonight's video. But before we do, if you guys enjoy it, be sure to hit that like button, hit that sub button for daily Raiders and NFL content. Try and get this video to 100 likes, folks. That would mean the absolute world to me. One thing was very clear to me the entire summer, and one thing was even clearer. I know he didn't pinpoint any players, and we're still waiting to see what type of roster moves or cuts or benching or what have you Antonio Pierce meant by that, saying some players made business decisions and we're going to make business decisions because of that. I've never really bought into the fact that Antonio Pierce wanted Gardner Minshew to be the starting quarterback. I feel like maybe Luke Getsy, which, I still never really liked the hire, but I do think he can do something. That kind of feels bad to say because we'll get into the run game in just a second, but I don't know who Antonio Pierce was talking about, but honestly, I think he's such a freaking dude. I think he's such a man. I think he's literally the perfect coach for this Las Vegas Raiders team, and just kind of, the identity that this young team is trying to form, that all in all, I do think this will be for the positive. I don't think the Panthers are as bad as people make them out to be. I think at the end of the day, Bryce Young is just not who we thought he was going to be. Andy Dalton, the Red Raider, kind of actually reminded me of, when a coach gets fired, and it could be like a 2-12 football team, and then the next game they win, 30-10, and they just blow their opponents by. And then the next couple of weeks they come back down to earth. That's kind of what that reminded me of. I think the Panthers defense specifically is extremely disrespected, but I never really felt at any point that Antonio Pierce genuinely wanted Gardner Minshew to be the starter over Aiden O'Connell. Now, I'm not saying Gardner Minshew should hit the bench. I'm not saying he's going to hit the bench, but he completed 18 of his 28 passes for only 214 yards. He had that garbage time touchdown. He had a bad interception. And then you saw AOC, who's much taller than Gardner Minshew. And he came out here and went 9-12 for 82 yards and a touchdown on his one possession. The Panthers outscored the Raiders 33-7 in the first 3 quarters. I mean, it's embarrassing. And one big component of it is the running back room / depleted, injured offensive line. And the reason I kind of, pinpointed Luke Getsy a minute or two ago is because Antonio Pierce said this: the scheme wasn't good enough. The design of plays wasn't good enough. What we thought was going to work didn't work, and we didn't put up the effort that we have in games past. Now, that's maybe not a shot at Luke Getsy. Maybe that's a shot at Patrick Graham. I highly doubt that's a shot at Patrick Graham because he's done a phenomenal job in the last year and a couple of games with this Raiders defense entering his 3rd year. But the Raiders obviously wanted to get the ground game going. And after the first quarter, it was 7-7, right? We mentioned that stat. The Panthers, just historically, have been a terrible team for a couple of years now, but specifically the last 8 games, I mean, they went 2-15 last year. Like, it just is kind of obvious. But the Raiders clearly wanted to establish a run game, and they tried it on first and second down in each of their 2 possessions. They had a total of 12 yards. They ran 12 times for 41 yards in the first half. Fans started booing them late in the second quarter. All in all, they finished with 55 rushing yards yesterday. Fans booed pretty much every handoff after the first half. And they've now had 55 or fewer rushing yards in their first 3 games. That's the first time in franchise history. And to just be fair, the offensive line was not getting holes open. I don't think the issue is Amir White. I don't think the issue is Alexander Madison. I don't think the issue is the running room personnel. I do think the offensive line didn't help. Obviously, they allowed 3 sacks. They had 6 total quarterback hits. Through 3 quarters, the offense managed just 7 points, like we said, to a Panthers defense that allowed 36.5 points per game through their first 2 games. Luke Getsy, I wouldn't be surprised if he was fired at some point in the season, but he's still the offensive coordinator. And I don't want a situation like that to happen because, especially last year, Josh McDummy, Jimmy Garoppolo, I was going to say his nickname that I coined, but I can't say that on YouTube. It's bad. And to be fair, the defense was also bad. But, every team has a dud. Even championship caliber teams, even teams like, I don't even want to mention the Kansas City Chiefs, but even teams like the Chiefs, you always have at least one dud a season. And I know we started this video talking about the last couple of duds from the Raiders in the last 4 years. It happens, but now you're 1-2, and it just sucks because you had all the momentum in the world. You're playing the worst team in the NFL, or what was the worst team in the NFL. You're at home, and you're coming off a crazy fourth quarter comeback against one of the best teams in the NFL, the Baltimore Ravens. But the defense was not good, and the defensive line is banged up, and now Marcus frickin' Epps is done for the season, which is, of course, perfect. Absolutely sucks, but there was no pass rush. The run defense has not been doing its job. Chuba Hubbard, the running back for the Carolina Panthers, 114 yards, 5 catches, 55 yards, and a touchdown. The defense secondary specifically just are not tackling well, and they could not contain Andy Dalton, or they couldn't stop Andy Dalton. 70.3% of his passes, 319 yards, 3 touchdowns. Deontay Johnson, 8 catches, 122 yards, and a touchdown. Max Crosby said after the game, a lot of people have to look in the mirror. It's a wake-up call, and it's just not where you want to be after 3 weeks. And I get it. The Raiders are 1-2. Folks, there's a lot of other teams that are 1-2 or even worse. It's a long season, but the run game needs to be figured out immediately. The offense needs to be figured out immediately. I don't think Gardner Minshew's starting job is in jeopardy. I hope it is, because I've never really believed Aiden O'Connell was a worse QB for him for this team. But, it is what it is. That's just my opinion. Kind of a rant ramble. We'll get back to you guys tomorrow. Thank you for watching. Hit that like button, hit that sub button for daily Raiders and NFL content. Let me know your thoughts down below. Who do you think Antonio Pierce was calling out, saying some guys just were not present? Thank you for watching. Have a great rest of your night. We'll see you tomorrow.